Hello and welcome to the On the Slab Horror Show, the show that we bring to you each and every Friday night. King, why do we go every Friday night?
Because in our lovely little island of Ireland, Friday night was always horror night. That's why.
Usually about 10 o'clock, right after the watershed, we'd get an old horror movie on RTE or TG4. And that's where we found a lot of love growing up. Tonight, we aren't joined by the Dynamo, unfortunately. Again, this week he's busy. I do have the King here with me. How are you, King?
All good, my man. And you?
Not bad, not bad. And as you can see, we're joined by another guest tonight, a Hollywood star in Mr. L.C.Holt. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm great. Good to see you. Great to be on the show. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks for taking the time out to come on. I'm sure you're a busy man.
Well, it's been pretty busy lately because I've been working on this new movie that's in pre-production and acting in a number of movies that haven't come out yet. So some of them have. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty busy time. But I always love to get on and talk horror movies.
Well, it's very hard when you like horror such a tight knit group that when you find people to talk to, you're like you can talk for hours.
Mm.
But most of the time, it's like people look at you and you're talking about horror movies and they're like, oh, you're one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Well, growing up, that was very. I didn't have a lot of people around who liked horror or really movies in general, even though I was obsessed with them. So I can definitely relate.
Yeah, I was like that. Any kind of movies growing up, but lately, then when I got a bit older, it was all horror this, horror that. Maybe it's because my parents told me not to. I'll blame
Yeah.
them.
That was like me as well. I used to just watch the horror films on my own. None of my mates were into horror, just me.
Yeah.
And so like that, I used to sit up on a Friday night for like, I think I've said on previous shows, the first time I saw American Werewolf in London was like at 1 o'clock in the morning on the Channel 4, which was a British channel that we get British channels, but that was my first time seeing that, and that's like, oh God, I love it so much, you know. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me and Greg. We're here to talk to LC, and again, it's an honor to have you on the show, and let's talk about some horror. What do you think?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I mean, I was like that. Yeah, my mother wasn't really into horror, never was in her life. But my father would sneak the horror in. So, and it's weird because he wasn't into them either. I mean, I really was the only one. My brother loved science fiction. So I got, from him a love for movies like Aliens, which still kind of borders on that horror
Yeah.
level. And then Star Trek, which he was far more into than I was, and I don't know, I can't really trace back. Like there are things I can't trace back. I can't trace back where the love of horror came from. I just know that I always had it when I
Yeah.
was first exposed to it, and the same thing with movies and what I decided to do as a career. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I wanted to be a scientist. But the only reason I wanted to be a scientist is because I watched Back to the Future and I like Christopher Lloyd.
Doc
So
Brown.
Doc Brown made me want to be a scientist. So then after I got over the scientist thing, I just wanted to be in movies and be an actor and director. And I was very fortunate in so much as over many years of work, I've been able to do that.
And who were your inspirations to become an actor and then a director? Like,
I loved one of the first actors whose style I really loved was Anthony Perkins,
oh,
who played,
nice.
Great
of
actor,
course,
yeah.
Norman Bates. I just thought Anthony Perkins, still to this day, he's one of those actors that has such a distinctive personal style
Yeah.
that the way he delivered lines, that cadence of his voice, and it's sort of like different but similar to the Christopher Walken thing, where Christopher Walken, you just know it's him,
Yeah.
because of the delivery of the lines. And Anthony Perkins had that in a way that was very specific and unique to him. And I always loved Anthony Perkins, loved the Psycho movies. He was definitely an inspiration to me as early inspiration to
Mm.
be an actor. But there were a lot of others. I loved character actors, which is essentially what I am as
Yeah.
a character actor. People like Warren Oates, and who's a great Western star. I watched a lot of Westerns growing up with my grandfather.
Sure.
People like that I always really liked. I like character actors.
Westerns wouldn't be my kind of thing now, I must say.
Yeah.
Do you know something?
Yeah,
Just funny. Sorry for cutting in against everyone there. We haven't gotten very many Western horror films.
well, I have an idea in my head. But the thing about Westerns are very expensive, because you have to create the world of this. It's sort of like doing a science fiction movie on a spaceship or something. You have to create the entire world of the story, because it just simply doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore in the case of Westerns, and it doesn't exist yet in the case of science fiction. So those are expensive. But I've always wanted to do a horror Western, and I have an idea in my head for it. A guy I worked with, who everybody knows, named Ty West, did a Western. So he is primarily known for horror, but he did a Western called In the Valley of Violence with John Travolta. It was good.
Right.
And Ty, of course, I knew before then because we had worked together on Youre Next. I shot him in the head in that movie, shot him with the arrow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely love Ty West.
Yeah, Ty West is great. He was already an established director by the time he appeared as an actor in Youre Next, which that was part of the running joke of that movie. If you watch that movie, there's a lot of directors who appear as actors in there. You got Ty West, you got Joe Swanberg, Simon, who played my brother in the movie, wasn't a director then, but he is now. But he was a producer and writer. And also there's a guy at the very end, the cop that comes in and gets the axe. That guy was also Calvin Lee Reeder, is also a director. So there's a lot of directors acting in that movie.
Bit of a club going on there.
Yeah.
Bit of a wrong turn twist at the end of Youre Next, with the cop getting taken out at the end.
Yeah, that was always in the movie. There were some changes that were made to the script from when I first read it to when the movie was completed, that they did primarily so that we could do a sequel, because people always think about that, with horror movies, like, can there be a sequel? Because originally when the cop pops in, Sharni Vincent, who starred in the movie, he didn't shoot her in the arm, he shot her in the head, killed her. That was the original ending. And then he opened the door and the axe got him in the face. But they kept Sharni alive in order for there to be potentially a sequel. And in the original script for that movie, for my character, I got my head chopped off. And they changed that because they were like, we need to keep a killer alive. So I just got stabbed with the knife in the forehead. And they had this whole story of how I would come back with brain damage and all this. And that movie was a lot of fun. It would have been great to have done sequels to it. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it would have already happened by now if it was going to happen.
I think I remember watching Youre Next, and I found, like, the likes of your character there, it was very Scream-esque. Did he or didn't he survive? That kind of way. But it was very Stranger, like the Strangers with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. It was very like that, but a whole lot. I don't know, it was creepier because the masks were creepier, or because there was more people in it. But, it was definitely more intense.
Yeah, Youre Next was a bit more of an action movie than The Strangers, which was sort of purely kind of tension, suspense. And Youre Next had a lot of action in it. In fact, I've always kind of saw it as being like an action horror movie, more than just a straight horror.
Them movies are a lot of fun though. The action horror, like, it's great when you get the likes of certain horrors that are built over time. So say like The Witch, and things like that are built towards the end. Or then you have, say, Youre Next, where there's action happening all the time. So that kind of way. Like there's a difference. Those kind of movies don't hold people as much, I find, anymore.
You mean the more like the slow burn movies?
Yeah, the slow builds. Yeah. So say you worked with Ty West. So say his Innkeepers.
Yeah.
It was a very slow burner. and it didn't receive a lot of great love that I think it deserved.
I agree. I do agree with that. I think that there is a place for everything as long as it's good, you know.
Absolutely.
And then you have nowadays you have this thing that's, you know, these names that are put on movies, that horror movies, I mean, that I don't really get into. Like, you know, they say things like elevated, you know.
Hate that.
We done an
And
episode on that.
I just don't understand it, because I don't think it does a good service to the movies that are called elevated, and it certainly doesn't do a good service to the movies that are called not elevated, because you're insinuating that they're somehow beneath this other thing by the simple word of saying elevated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really get into that. That's more of a thing. I swear to you, what happened there is someone wrote that in an article, and it's just one of those things that caught on as a term, you know.
I think we had a term for it originally called psychological horror. That's what it was originally, you know, and that was
perfectly.
Yeah, but it's probably not cool enough now. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because there's some great. I mean, Hereditary is an example of a movie that has a slower burn and is psychological. You know. And that would be called. That would nowadays the people would put the elevated thing on that. You know.
I thought that was actually great in the. I don't know, L.C., if you saw the recent Scream.
Yes, I did.
When that woman talks about, ask me a question about elevated horror, blah blah blah, and I can answer it. Like, so they're basically taking the piss out of, you know, this generation.
Yeah.
You know, they can talk about all the modern films, but nothing about the old films, really. You know.
Yeah.
And it's so right though. It's the way the kids are nowadays. You know, we're always trying to advocate for younger people to look at the older horror films from the 70s, 60s. Like, we have a series on our show where we do 10 from the 50s, 10 from the 60s, and so on.
Yes.
And it's basically to be honest with you, it's to try and get, you know, younger. We'd have one or two younger viewers, and, you know, it'd be nice to get them into the older horror as well as what they're used to as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important if you're going to be, especially if you're going to be a filmmaker. You know, you have to watch things that are outside your wheelhouse, because you have to have more of a idea of cinematic grammar, more than just saying, well, you know, I watched these 3 movies and I just want to make movies that are like those 3 movies, you know. Because I mean, I've known some filmmakers who have never seen Frankenstein, and it's like, I mean, you're missing out. I mean, you're missing out not only on a great movie, but you're missing out on learning techniques that may have been forgotten, that, you know, could be made new and fresh and original again. And it's the same. I love that you guys do that, because if you look at the 50s, if you look at going back to the 30s, really, but if you look at every single decade, you can find more than a handful of films that are, you know, worth talking about and worth remembering and worth people nowadays watching.
Yeah. We challenge ourselves to do from the 1910s upwards.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We're up to the 70s, I think.
70s would be the next one, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Gorgon was #1 in the 30s, was it? I might be wrong.
I think it was, yeah.
And we had, obviously, Universal Monsters in there as well, because no one seems to watch them, and you're like, that's where it all started.
Absolutely. See, I just want to ask you, I love characters with masks, and as you can probably see, Leatherface, blah blah blah. But did you get to choose the lamb, or was it just handed to you? Like, did you get, like, you know, as in, did you look at it and say, yeah, I could actually make something with this, you know?
It's a good question. I didn't choose it. The names were all in the script. So in the script, it was Lamb Mask, Tiger Mask, Fox Mask was the name of the characters. Okay. So that was already determined by the time I read it. And I was offered the role of the Lamb Mask because, I don't know if you guys know, but Adam Wingard, the director of Youre Next, and I go back with this. That was like our 3rd film we did together.
Cool.
We started out together, actually. I'd known him since he was 19. His first feature film I was in, and his second, and then we did Youre Next, and then after that we did. He produced VHS 2, which I was in, and
that was
the
awesome.
guy that the guy that wrote VHS2, the guy that wrote Youre Next wrote and directed my segment in VHS2.
Brilliant.
So I've done 4 movies with Adam Wingard. The way basically Youre Next came about for me was I had done this movie. The first movie we did was a movie called Homesick, which was shot on 16 millimeter film, and had, Bill Moseley was in it, and Tommy Tolles,
Nice.
Tiffany Shepis. And then, so we did that movie. And then after that, we did a smaller movie that actually went big called Pop Skull.
I was just looking it up there.
Yeah. Pop Skull it's one of my favorite movies we've done, which is a shame because it's one of the harder ones to find. It's a long story, but it had to do with the distributor going out of business after they bought it, and then rights were held, and so it's this big long thing. But and then after that, I did one in particular, a horror movie that I really didn't like the experience of making it. I didn't like the end product, and it was a really horrible experience all the way around. And so I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. In terms of acting, I pretty much quit for about 4 years. I said, if this is the way it's going to be, I'm not doing this, because this is too, the people one has to deal with sometimes, it's just not the kind of people you want to deal with. And so after a while, after about 4 years, Wingard said, we're going to make another movie. And he said, and you're going to be in it. And I said, I am? I thought I quit. And he said, no, I'm going to send you the script, and there's this part, and we wrote it for you, and you're going to do it. It's basically how he presented it to me. So I was like, okay, well, I wasn't really into doing films at that point, and I was like, well, send it to me, man, because I know Adam, I love Adam, I respect his work. He and I have always had this, been in sync and simpatico in a way that was so easy, Yeah. And I was like, if I was ever to come back into this, I would do it with Adam, because he's like the guy that would make me do it. And so he sent me the script for Youre Next, and I read it, and I read the landmass part that he wanted me to play, and that just seemed like so much fun. And I was like, yeah, let's give it a go, let's do it. And so I agreed to do it, and the rest is history.
You got dragged back from the depths.
I did, yeah. And everything I've done since then, worth talking about, has come about from that film. Even though I had worked for 10 years prior to that movie, everything I've gotten since, the convention appearances, my career, the other films I've done, it all basically stems back from Youre Next. Yeah.
It's amazing. We've said it before to a couple of people. It takes one role. You could have had 100 credits, but you come on and take one role, and the film blows up, and all of a sudden you're laughing.
And people would say that to me on the set of Youre Next. They would say things like, you're going to be doing a lot of conventions for this movie, or when people see this, they're going to really like your character. They're going to like this movie. And, after being a working actor for over 10 years, you hear that on a lot of things. And so at that point, I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't buy into it 1 second. It's like when you're on a set acting in a movie, your job just is about doing it as well as you can, man. You can't think about success or conventions, all that kind of stuff at that moment, because that's not your job. And then, but in that case, they were right, because as soon as that movie came out, people were all over me about these conventions. I actually had never gone to a horror convention before I was invited to one as a guest. I had no idea what they were really, or what to expect. And I actually, it's funny, this goes back to the movie I'm about to start directing called Watchdog, because he's in it. But the first person I asked was Mark Patton, who I'd known. And I said, hey, Mark, so what about these conventions? What do I expect? What is it? And because he had been doing them for several years at that point. And he said, just go and have fun, and remember to treat everybody well. And that sort of has always become my mantra, because you do these conventions, and sometimes the celebrities don't treat people that well. I mean, I would say it's a small percentage in my experience of people who just don't want to be there in terms of like celebrities. But my opinion is this, and I've heard Mark say it, I heard Sid Haig say it. It's like, if you don't want to be here, then get the hell out, you know.
It's
Yeah,
true.
what a legend Sid Haig is.
Yeah, Sid Haig. I never really got to know Sid Haig. I've known plenty of people who were friends with him, like Bill Moseley, obviously.
Top.
Top, yeah. And Bill and I did my first horror film together, which was Homesick, that movie I was telling you about with Wingard. And he's just, Bill Moseley's just a great guy. I mean, just totally not what you would expect, you know.
Yeah.
I've heard that off a few people that met him at conventions and stuff, that he's just an all-around legend.
Yeah, I mean, when we were on the set of Homesick, what he talked about more than anything else was how proud of his daughter, who had just started college. You know, I mean, not the kind of thing you would think Chop Top or Otis from House of a Thousand Corpses would be talking about. But yeah, it's just a really cool guy.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Cap.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we don't have any horror conventions in Ireland, would you believe?
Really?
Yeah, we were only talking there before you came on about maybe heading over to. Sorry, go on, Greg.
That's not entirely true. There is one in Kilkenny that started this year.
Oh, well, there you go. I didn't know about it.
Yeah, no, I only know because it popped up. But yeah, we were literally saying off screen we were gonna go to probably try and hit up Manchester's for the love of horror next year.
Because it'd be a bit expensive for us to go to the States.
Yes. Well, I've never done a convention overseas. I've traveled overseas, but I've actually never done a convention. There was talk at one time of doing one in Germany, but that's convention-wise. That's the only thing I've heard of. But I've loved traveling in Europe very much. I've never been to Ireland actually, but
come over, man. You're always welcome.
I would love to. I mean, I have a lot of heritage from Ireland.
You need to come over and, sample the water over here,
Yeah.
The fizzy water.
Yeah, the fizzy water, yeah. LC, what I was going to ask you there was, when you're at conventions, do you get, have you ever had any kind of weird fans ask you anything weird, or do anything weird, or ask you to, I don't know, put the mask on, or, that weird shit,
I've had a couple things. Some of them are really innocent.
Yeah.
There was this one guy. I'll tell you an innocent one, and I'll tell you a creepy one.
Deadly.
Okay. The innocent one was, there was this guy, and I was in New Jersey, I think. I think it was a Chiller Theater convention. And guy comes over to the table, and I see him approaching, and he's got a board in his hand with nails in it. And I'm like, well, hang on. My first thing in my mind is not the movie Youre Next. The first thing in my mind is is he going to hit me with that thing?
Jesus.
And
what did I do to you?
Yeah, I'm like, hey man, don't do this. We can talk about it. But he comes over, and he's got this board with nails in it, and the nails are positioned perfectly. Obviously, he had taken a freeze frame of the movie and recreated perfectly the board of nails that I stepped on. And the one that I stepped on, his version of it had fake blood on it, wow. And a little pool of fake blood. And he had a red paint pen, and he was like, would you sign my board? And I said, yeah, man, that's great. Once I got it, I was like, that's cool. Yeah, I was very relieved. And then the same guy also pulled out a package of steak knives, because I get stuck in the head with a steak knife. And I signed the steak knives for him. So that was probably the most original thing anyone's ever brought.
I can imagine, yeah.
No, do you know what? We bring it up all the time. When you see someone stepping on a nail or something like that, that's the worst bit of horror for us. The stuff that can happen in everyday life. I know people getting stabbed and stuff happens every day, but no, standing on a nail or catching your hands in the door or something.
My mother stood on a nail when she was working years ago, and it went right up her foot. Yeah, sorry for cutting over you there, Elsie.
No. I mean, we had talked about that in the movie. We called it the Home Alone moment. Because that was the inspiration Adam had for me stepping on the nail, was the scene in Home Alone where Daniel Stern steps on it. And it just makes you, even in that movie, which is a kid's movie, you just go, oh God, it's horrible. So we just decided to go the whole foot in. and I bleed profusely for stepping on a nail. If you notice in the movie, there's no way you would bleed that much from stepping on a nail, but it looks cool, but yeah, so that was the convention story of kind of a cool thing. I'll tell you a convention story about a slightly weirder experience, which this actually happened at the very first convention I ever did, which I can't remember where it was, but it was in the Northeast of America, at Massachusetts or somewhere like that. And there was this really cool hotel, and it didn't go up. The hotel spread out. It was like it reminded me of The Shining.
Right.
The Overlook.
Because the Overlook. You know how it was just winding? It just went out like a maze. And so I went to this, and I don't know which night it was. May have been the first, may have been the second night of the convention. I was in the bar afterwards having a drink with Kane Hodder, and he buys all the drinks. So I had more than one drink with Kane, because if he keeps buying, I'll keep drinking.
Exactly.
And then eventually Kane left, and then I left, and the bar was in the hotel. So I had noticed when I was in the bar that there was a guy over at the bar, at the counter with a horror shirt, obviously a guy there for the convention, and he was like looking over. My brain is he's looking at Kane Hodder, because here's Kane Hodder sitting here having drinks. So I go back to the room, and I take this long passage, and I finally get to my room, which is way isolated on one side of the hotel. Go inside, close the door, and as soon as I'm like dressed, for bed, get into the bed, I hear a knock at the door. So I kind of go over to the door, and I look through the peephole, and here's this guy from the bar. He's followed me back to my room. And the first thing that comes into my mind is something my manager told me that has happened at conventions sometimes, where people think that you keep the money that you're making in your room. Which is not true. I don't keep the money with me for that reason. And celebrities have actually been robbed at these hotels because of that. So I'm thinking, there's no way I'm opening this door, because I don't know who this is, and it's 2:00 in the morning. So I just back away from the door, and the guy keeps knocking. I clocked it. It was like 4 minutes. The guy stood there and knocked at the door.
Jesus.
And then there was no sound. And I went to the door, and I looked at the people, and he was gone. And that was when I realized I'm not going to have any more cigarettes tonight. I'm staying in this room.
Probably sitting in the hall just up the way, waiting for you.
Yeah, waiting for me to come out. Never saw the guy again at the convention. So I don't know what that was all about.
Could have been anything.
What happened? Yeah. We went banging on Kane Hodder's door to see what happens.
Right. And Kane Hodder knocked him out.
Yeah, because Kane that's the thing about Kane too. He's just such a big guy and scary guy. He'll take out a wad of cash that's like, that big, and just start like, counting it out to the waiter and stuff,
Nobody's going near him. Nobody's going near him.
No.
That's the thing. The way you were saying there, you think you were looking over at Kane. It's very harsh to see him, because a lot of people don't know what he looks like. Because it's
horror guys will know, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, but 90% of the time it's behind the mask. Yeah.
Well, he's quite a presence, and Kane and I have an unusual sort of friendship, in so much as, as I said before, I smoke cigarettes, and Kane is very anti-smoking, and if you know, like, his backstory, his father died of lung cancer.
Yeah.
He doesn't. So, I would have to hide to have a smoke, because if I didn't, the door would open and Kane would come out and stare at me.
Oh God!
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. And I'm standing there like this, like, hi, like a little kid, getting caught by his dad, and then he would pop back inside, So whenever I do conventions with Kane, I have to kind of hide, sneak a smoke somewhere.
Tell me about the new film you were talking about. What's it called? Watchdog. Yeah.
Yes, the new film. You can. Yeah, I can. Yeah, definitely. We just wrapped up the Indiegogo for Watchdog, which begins shooting the third week of September.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was very successful, and I greatly appreciate everyone who supported the film and shared it and bought perks and have their name on the film, and thank all of you. And but it's a psychological horror film about a guy who coming home one night for an anniversary dinner with his girlfriend ends up getting mugged, and there's a drifter who sort of helps him out of this mugging situation. So the guy, out of gratitude, asks the guy, hey, listen, you don't have a place to sleep. Do you want to sleep here? And then tomorrow when your bus leaves, I'll take you to the bus station. So guy's like, okay, takes him back to the house, and he doesn't have any idea of the kind of person he's letting into his house at that point. And Fangoria did an article, they called it a reverse horror movie, or a reverse home invasion movie, which I thought was kind of a cool idea, because it is exactly that. I mean, instead of somebody trying to get in, it's the people, the couple trying to get out.
Yeah.
Trying to get out of your own house.
Trying to get out of your own house. Yeah, you're stuck in an isolated spot out in the middle of nowhere, and you've brought someone into the situation for, you had good intentions, but their intentions are not as good as yours. So it's sort of like, what is that old saying? No good deed goes unpunished.
Yep, that's very true.
So it's going to be a really tense, action-packed, character-driven psychological horror movie with a good amount of some good gore gags and violence that you're going to get out of any kind of horror movie that I direct. This is the second movie I directed. Well, it's just the third technically, but the last movie I directed, Time's Up, is actually premiering at the end of this month in Miami, Florida.
Nice one.
And that's a slasher film. That's a slasher film. So, with a great cast of people, everybody from Hannah Fierman, who is another VHS alum. She was in the first one. I was in the second one. Damien Maffei, who was in the sequel to Strangers. Chaney Morrow, who's in Watchdog. Felissa Rose, who's also in Watchdog. Dave Sheridan from The Devil's Rejects. Great cast in Time's Up.
It's great. It's great to see Felicia coming back around again, in terms of horror movies that she's in coming out. Obviously, she's in Late Checkout as well, that yourself was in, and obviously we had Anna Clary on as well a while back. But it's great. It's great to see people like that coming back around, because obviously Sleepaway Camp was 84.
Yeah, she was very young. Are you guys fans of Sleepaway Camp?
Absolutely. How could you not be?
Another actor who was in Time's Up with Felissa actually was Johnny Tierston, who was Ricky in Sleepaway Camp. So
cool.
He's a cool guy. He actually gets to play a school principal in Time's Up. Plays a very big part actually in the movie, and Tiers is always fun to work with. He's such a character.
I imagine it'll be a while before we get to see that, though.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know that, we're talking to distributors now with Time's Up, and I don't know the final deal yet, but you guys will definitely get it. It's just with filmmaking, it's hard to determine like the times, because you don't necessarily have too much control when you're dealing with the distributors. You have control to some extent, but then they always time these things out and market them to what they imagine would be the most like financially advantageous thing for them.
Yeah.
So they have these strategies of like when it comes out in America, when it comes out in Europe, and Japan, and so forth.
L.C., do you write and direct a film that you're doing? Do you?
Yes, every film I've directed, I've written.
Okay, so this is probably going to sound like a strange question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm going to see what you think. The way the world is kind of different now in relation to releasing horror content, whatever. Like, would you have that in the back of your mind when you're writing a script, or do you just write what comes out? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you think you have to be worried about, say, doing this thing to a certain type of, a certain part of the community, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, you might have to not do anything on, say, a gay couple, say, for example. Like, would that come into your mind when you're writing a film, to take it straight away from something, or are you just balls out giving it socks?
No, I don't think about things like that when I write.
Good.
it's so hard to write something that's good just in general that I think if you start to think too much, you'll get inside your own head. And
Yeah.
I just concentrate on telling a good story. Now, I am always, I love a variety of different ethnicities and things in my
Yeah.
movies, and I think it's a fantastic thing to include, all kinds of people, whether it be different sexual orientations or
Yeah.
ethnicities, because I think it helps the movie ultimately. But I don't
Absolutely.
think about it. To me, the right actor for the role is the right actor for the role,
Yeah.
regardless of you know, whatever their sexual preference was, say,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
what have you. So no, I don't, I don't think about that stuff when I'm
I
writing.
know it was a bit of a left field question, and I didn't mean to kind of jump it on you, but it just came into my head there. I just thought I might see what you thought, just
It's quite a valid one in terms of questions this time because of cancel culture being so
so prevalent.
prevalent in everything that's coming out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is the thing that you have to think about now, especially from more of a producer standpoint. I
Yeah.
don't think you think about it in terms of writing and directing, but I think if you just maintain your own personal integrity, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
uh, you know I'm a pretty boring guy, other than the fact that I act and I write and direct movies. I don't talk about political stuff or religion or stuff like that in interviews and stuff. So I'm of that slightly old school mentality of nobody gives a damn what an actor thinks about this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The
But
right
if
way.
people do, I mean, if somebody who is in the business does want to use their platform to talk, I mean, that's perfectly fine. It's just not
Yeah.
mine.
No.
Yeah.
I know
Do your job and out.
sorry, I keep interrupting you, Greg. Sorry. Um,
You're grand.
I'm very aware of time, so we won't keep you for too much longer. But what I do want to ask you is, and you've probably been asked this many a time, what does LC stand for?
Well, that is a question that so many people have posed, and it actually has become a fun thing to do on sets. We've actually I've been on sets where people did like running things where they were, and I think I mentioned to you guys at some point, maybe off the air, that one of the ones was my favorite was lithium carbonide, which really clever. That's that sounds like something out of Star Trek or Star Wars.
Mm,
Yeah, but I don't know. I almost think it's better to keep the mystery alive.
it is. I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think it's class. I'm not the way you were saying there that you're a quiet guy. I think it's loose cannon.
Loose
L.C.Holt.
cannon. That's good. I like that one.
Can have that if you want. Okay.
That's going. That's going into the book.
I'm going. I'm going loose change here.
Loose change. It's so funny. I actually just. Well, I probably shouldn't say that because it's kind of spoilery. But yeah, loose change is something that I was writing. I actually called a character that one time in the script. Loose
Ah,
change.
there you go. We'll say no more about it. We'll say no more about it. Move on, move on, move on. So just before we go, give us your top 5 horror films. Now they don't have to be in order.
Mhm.
So your top 5 that you love of all time.
All right, I'll give you my top 5 right now that's in my head.
Yeah,
It's subject to change next week,
yeah, that's fair.
because you can always think of other things. But
Yeah,
I would say that my top 5 would be The Exorcist,
lovely.
a movie from the 70s called Burnt Offerings,
Oh, I
which
know that. Yeah.
doesn't get a lot of respect. Dan Curtis movie. I would say, um, I would actually say Dawn of the Dead, the George Romero version.
Nice.
It's good. It's a
Um,
quality movie.
and let's see, Psycho, even though you might not call that a horror film, I call it like one of the proto horror films.
Yeah.
It's set up. It was nearly like one of the original slashers.
Yeah, if you didn't have Psycho, I don't think you would have had a lot of the other
You
things.
No.
definitely wouldn't have had Halloween.
Right, you wouldn't have had Halloween for many reasons.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's 4. So let's see, the 5th one. I think I'll say Alien.
Alien.
Yeah, Ridley
Yeah.
Scott's original Alien, I think, is a really creepy, scary movie. I mean, her going through the ship at the end with all the steam, and you don't know where the creature is, and you don't
Yeah.
have any music. You just hear the sound of the ship and the self-destruct. That's so damn tense.
Damn right
That
it is.
that's one of the most tense movies I've ever watched,
Yeah.
Yeah,
ever.
yeah,
And I only rewatched it there for the first time in a long time.
and
Start of the year, I was like, "Fuck, this is tense."
and I'll tell you something that scared the shit out of me when I first saw it was where Tom Skerritt is in the ventilation shafts. And they're telling him he's getting closer, and then she goes, "Not that way," and turns around, and there's the creature. God, that scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it.
The original jump scares.
Yeah, great
it.
one,
Yeah.
great one.
And
Because that's just that plays into the fear of being trapped in a confined space with something you don't want to run into in the dark.
yeah.
I don't want to run into in the light either.
Yeah, definitely not.
I've got one for you. What's your favorite type of horror, as in subgenre, like slasher, creature feature, psychological?
Elevated.
No, I'm not using that. I told you.
Yeah, we'll leave elevated aside. That's tough because one of my goals as a director is to do a film in as many subgenres of horror as I can, because I'm a big subgenre guy. What is my favorite subgenre?
I've got him here, Cal.
I think you might have, yeah, because I don't know. Because if I say one, I think of another one. I can't answer that. I really can't. Yeah.
He strikes a winner.
Good job. Yeah, subgenre question got me.
No, it's easy for me. It's creature feature for me.
Creature feature for him.
Yeah.
Slashers for me, I think, isn't it? It would be.
Yeah.
Actually, on the slasher thing, and I know, there was a sheep mask or lamb mask is lamb mask is your iconic character, right? But which of the slasher characters do you think he could take out, and who would he be friends with?
Uh-oh. We have people throwing things at me at the end of that one.
Well,
I think just because I know him personally and we're friends and we've done movies together, I would love to see my character, the Lamb Mask, go up against Damien Maffei's character, the Man in the Mask from The Strangers.
Oh.
And they're two home invasion movies, so I think if you put them together, it would make sense.
Absolutely.
That would be one I would not only like to be in, but watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody sign that up. That's the next crossover.
I'm down for that.
That'd be like, you'd forget how good the terms of both of those characters actually are in the movies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And as you said, they're very similar types of movies.
Well, yeah, if you put The Strangers and Youre Next together, that's one of those things that would make sense in a way that, like, the Lamb Mask going up against, say, like the Hell Priest from Hellraiser wouldn't make sense so much.
No.
That's all over in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think just in terms of a movie that would actually could be made or would be interesting to watch, I think that combining Youre Next and the Strangers franchise would be fun.
That'd be cool, actually. That was a great answer. As I said, we're very aware of time. Although I think you can tell we've really enjoyed having you on the show tonight, LC. It's been an absolute honor to have you on the show, and I'd like to think you'll come back on again sometime.
Of course, yeah. I mean, these sorts of interviews where it's just a discussion and we're talking, I love it. I think they're the most fun.
Yeah. Like that's it. We just love chatting. And some of us chat more than others, unfortunately. Sorry, but look, we will let you go for now. And again, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. And I know we leaned an awful lot on Youre Next, but we know you have so much more there, and we know you have so much more coming out. And we can't wait. We can't wait for Watchdog. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, time's up as well.
Yeah,
and time's up. Yeah, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, check them out. Check them out. And it was an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, anytime we'll get back on here and do it again.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Greg, sign us off there. Go on.
Well, this has been our Friday night, ladies and gentlemen. It's probably been better than yours, but thanks for tuning in. And in the words of the great George A. Romero, stay
Stay
scared.
scared. Woo!